Yeah, I know, same shirt, same day, but I gotta do something because I'm getting nothing friggin' done here today, as usual. Anyway, um, the horror genre has a lot of subgenres, slashers, monsters, whatever. But there was a group of films that came out. It started like in the early '60s. Oh, my dog's doing something. You're not going to chew on my goddamn glass case. No, Danny. I don't know if you can see, dog. Here, come on, come on. What's the matter? You need attention? I don't know if you can see her head or not. She needs attention. But anyway, I believe it started. Well, it started earlier than that. There was a film in, I think it was 1945, called Dead of Night. English film with a bunch of people invited for a weekend retreat, and everyone has a story. So that might have been the first anthology film. I'm not 100% sure, but going back to 1962, Roger Corman's Tales of Terror, which would be classified as an anthology film, because these were three separate tales of Edgar Allan Poe, and the movie starred Vincent Price in multiple segments, Peter Lorre, and Basil Rathbone. I remember one of them was The Black Cat. I think the other one was The Cask of Amontillado or whatever. I remember Peter Lorre walled up Vincent Price and his wife down in the basement, I believe, something like that. So that sort of opened the door a little bit, and 3 years later, Amicus Films released Dr. Terror's House of Horrors. Now, Amicus was sort of like competition to Hammer Films, except they pretty much, I don't know, it looks like all they did was anthologies. So, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors starred Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, who they obviously lured away from Hammer for this, and Donald Sutherland in an early role. And these people are on a train, and Cushing comes on as Dr. Shrek, and he's playing with the tarot cards. Now, each of the passengers, I believe there was maybe 4 of them, had a separate story. Like, one of them's married to a werewolf. There's one about this fucking vine that strangles people. Christopher Lee's an art critic or something that has his competition loses a hand and the disembodied hand chases him. And it winds up that at the end no one is leaving the train because Dr. Shrek is actually death and they have to follow death to hell. That was pretty cool. Well, Amicus followed that up with a bunch of stories based on the writings of Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, and came up with something called Torture Garden in 1967. And again, this starred Peter Cushing, Jack Palance, and Burgess Meredith as the devil. And it's some kind of sideshow type deal where, they go in and like tales are told. And like I said, if you're familiar with Bloch's writings, it's a bunch of his short stories turned into like short films. After that, a couple of years later, in 1971, they came up with The House That Dripped Blood, again starring Christopher Lee. It was a series, and Ingrid Pitt was in this one too, Ferdy Mayne. It was a series of, again, tales that, were written by Robert Bloch, and trying to think. I remember the vampire one, that was toward the end. Even though it was called The House That Dripped Blood, there was not a drop of blood to be seen. But a year later, they would wait a minute, am I wrong here? I believe, now I'm trying to put this together, that they came out with Tales from the Crypt in 1972. Now, everybody knew what Tales from the Crypt was. That was William Gaines' EC Comics stuff that was used as a scapegoat against the rising tide of juvenile delinquency in the 50s. Well, basically, everything Gaines published except Mad Magazine was sort of banned. So, Amicus came to him, got a bunch of the stories that were written, the Santa Claus story, the one with Peter Cushing as this old man who was tormented to his death by these people that want to take his property, and what the hell was the other one? Oh, there was a good one there. Shit. brain fart. But anyway, the whole thing was Peter Cushing as Mr. Grimsdyke, and he comes back from the grave and tears this guy's heart out. They kept the true spirit of EC Comics going. They had the one with the Santa Claus that was also used on HBO with Larry Drake playing the Santa Claus, I believe. Damn, I'm drawing a blank here because there was a ton of great shit in there. Well, actually, when this came out in '72, it was in the winter, and it was paired with The House That Dripped Blood, and we kept going back to the drive-in to see this damn thing over and over again. So they followed that up with Asylum, another one that was based on Robert Bloch's tales. Again, Peter Cushing, I think Kurt Jurgens might have been in it. That one, for some reason, I wasn't really crazy about that one. But then they came back with another EC Comics title, Vault of Horror, which was basically a group of guys gathering in this deserted mausoleum and sat there telling the tales that brought them there, and their fate, for lack of better words, was to meet there every night and go over these indiscretions that they did, which basically had them earthbound to this mausoleum, and when dawn broke, they faded away. Pretty cool. What was the other one they had here? Okay, another one they came out with, and again it was Amicus, was From Beyond the Grave, again with Cushing, I believe, I don't know, Cushing was sort of in most of them. But the way they opened this up was a POV shot through a cemetery, cemetery with swirling mists and stuff. It was pretty cool. Of course, HBO wound up with Tales from the Crypt and turned it into a cable TV series which pulled no punches and used a lot of the EC comic stories. I don't remember if there was one. Now I got to go back to like 1979, and this was in my drunken heyday and shit like that. And there was a film playing. It was called Screams of a Winter Night. Now I went to see this pretty blasted, and it was basically a bunch of teenagers going out on a camping trip, and of course they go through the creepy boondocks town with the they go into the store with the creepy people hanging around, which I'm not even gonna I could say something, but it'd be political at this stage, so I can't say it, but just a bunch of inbred motherfuckers standing around basically. So they go find a campsite and they start telling stories, and of course the actors that are telling the stories are also incorporated in the stories. Well, the stories were so-so until they got to this frat initiation, where 3 guys had to spend the night in this haunted old creepy hotel, and they're told not to go to the 3rd floor. Well, they're in there with their sleeping bags and shit, and they hear some noises, and they figure this is a setup by their frat brothers to scare the shit out of them. So these noise and clanking things go on for about an hour until the one tough guy goes, "I'm going upstairs." "No, you're not." "Well, yes, I am." So he goes upstairs, and we go back to these people, and they're going, "It's been about an hour. What do you think happened?" One guy goes, "Well, I think he hooked up with the guys up there, and they're just trying to scare us." So he goes, "Let's go up there." So the 2 of them go up there. They go up to the 2nd floor. They find nothing. Up to the 3rd floor, they actually don't find anything, but there's another hidden stairway. So the other tells his friend, "Stay here, I'm going to go check this out." So he goes up and checks this out. Now he's gone for whatever this guy says, 15 minutes. Now this guy's getting antsy. He wants to go up and find out. Well, he goes up and he finds this door, and there's a strange green glow emanating out of it. And he goes inside, and there's his friend standing there with cuts all over his face, cuts all over his chest. His clothes are all shredded, and he's swatting at this green light bulb. And he keeps swatting at this green light bulb. And the other guy is sitting there like ready to shit himself. And just when he's ready to go out, the door shuts, and they're stuck in there. Well, they go back to the campfire thing, and the story was that basically the frat people came in looking for these guys and found the 2 of these guys all fucked up, mentally destroyed, scratched to pieces, clothes and rags, but they never found the first guy. Well, for whatever reason in my drunken state, this thing scared the shit out of me. So I just picked up the Blu-ray from Code Red because it was on sale, and it's supposedly the longer version. And I went through it. It's a little better on my 2nd watch, but when I get to that fucking point where they go in that room, chill goes down my spine and hair stands up on my arms and neck because there's something really creepy about the way this fucking thing was filled. So I can recap: Dead of Night, 1945, Tales of Terror, 1962, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, 1965, Torture Garden, 1967, House That Dripped Blood, 1971, Tales from the Crypt, 1972, Asylum, 1972, Vault of Horror, 1973, and From Beyond the Grave, 1974. I think Amicus sort of petered out about that point, but any of these films are worth watching because they have a really good cast. It's mostly all British, but like Peter Cushing, it looks like he's in every one of these things. I guess he needed the work. Then I also recall that he had a sick wife, so they're all worth a look. And Screams of a Winter Night's also worth a look too. So that's our episode for today. Things are cool. We're working on a bunch of other projects. So until next time, stay safe. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for tuning in. And thanks for telling your friends. And we'll see you on the flip side.